Morning, everybody. My name's Paul Gething. I work for Electro Components, and I'm here today to talk about creating actionable strategies across end-to-end supply chains. My background is one of operations, both supply chain and utility, asset management. I've worked as a consultant, I've worked as a contractor. I've been at Electros now for about 5 years. I've also worked in CRM, I've worked in public, and I've worked in procurement. So, fairly broad background. What I'm going to do is talk about some of my experiences, mainly in Electros, but also wider. And I'll also bring in some specific examples of some of the things that we've been doing within Electros, and hopefully you'll find this useful. So we started our supply chain transformation about 18 months ago. We flipped over the strategy, and I'll talk through some of things that we've done. In terms of other examples, we've delivered a product inventory management, pricing, and delivery strategy as well. And we're also using this approach to do our corporate social responsibility strategy. So we've got some experience there. In terms of what I'll cover creating a vision, objectives, strategy. I'm going to cover creating a delivery plan that delivers that. I'll cover how we've found executing effectively, so some of the pitfalls that we've overcome. I'll cover a way of how we've driven some connection across that end-to-end process to drive some commitment and some ownership. I've got a slide on challenges that we've sort of faced and to be honest, are still facing in terms of trying to mitigate those. I've got an end-to-end process summary at the end that's sort of a neat way of trying to package this into one slide, and I found it quite useful in terms of communicating both upwards and downwards. And then we'll have some questions. Now, I left some time at the end for questions. These sessions sometimes work better interactive, so if there's any really burning questions for understanding, do shout out, but there'll be time at the end for questions as well. So, this is not a plug. This is just a little bit of context information about Electros, just so that you can get a sense of the scale of our end-to-end supply chain. So we are global. We operate from about 12 DCs. We are a high service level distributor. We look to clear down all of our orders at the end of each day, so there's no order book. Every customer order that comes in goes out that day. We attain and try and look for next day service as far as possible using those 12 DCs and the global footprint that we've got. We're in about 80 countries, so we're delivering to about 80 countries as well. And as you can see, we've got a fairly broad customer base, over 1 million customers. We've got 2,500 suppliers. And we're averaging around about 55,000 parcel deliveries a day. So we're more into parcels rather than pallets, but we do big and heavy and nasty and hazardous and all of that good stuff as well. For us, an end-to-end supply chain includes logistics, it includes inventory, it includes pricing, it includes some of the risk and corporate standards, etc. What we've not got is products and sourcing. So they're functions that we need to collaborate with and work with. And that's been one of the challenges, to be honest, in terms of getting that connection and getting that commitment. And as you can see, we've got a number of brands. So we've got our own brand, RS Pro, and we've been acquiring a couple of companies in the last couple of years just to expand some of our niche supply chain areas, such as IESA, that offer a sort of group procurement opportunity. Our purpose as a company is making amazing happen, and that's what we're about. And I'll come back to the purpose a bit later. And that's driven us to have a vision of becoming first choice for customers, suppliers, our people, our stakeholders, our shareholders, and our investors. And again, that's been important for us just to set that ground level in terms of that vision and that purpose. So I'm going to move on and get into the content of this. So this is about creating that shared vision, objectives, and strategy. And these are some of the steps that we've gone through and are still going through in some cases to try and achieve that joint view and make sure that it's tangible and it's being communicated and cascaded and people understand their part they're playing, etc. And I'm going to start at the bottom with materiality. So the first thing that we did, and I would say anybody needs to do, is to understand what's important to your company and your business. So what's material? And from our perspective, that was quite clearly customer. Always put the customer first. And that's a change that we've gone through from our previous supply chain strategy and perhaps company strategy as well, in terms of we talk to customers, we talk to our people, we talk to our suppliers, we talk to some investors, and all of that was telling us that we weren't customer focused enough. So what we've done is we flipped our supply chain strategy from what was previously more of a cost effectiveness focus to much more of a customer first strategy. And simple things like looking at customer processes and starting with them at the back end and working back. So outside, back in, not what's important to us and then thinking about the customer at the end of it. So that's one of the things that we've done. We then started to think about why. So there's a chap called Simon Sinek. I don't know if people have heard of him or not. We've used him quite extensively to look at understanding why we do things. Golden circle. Once you can start to understand why you do things, you can then think about how you do things and what you produce. But understanding the why gives you the purpose. And it's understanding the purpose that will help you understand some of the things you need to achieve and deliver and build on that materiality piece. The other point here around the starting point is just being clear where your gaps are and where you think you're okay. So we had some fundamental operational gaps that we've still got in some cases and we're trying to plug. But obviously you can't stand still. So understanding those gaps, but understanding then what will enable future benefits and also where you can jump straight to some really innovative things. Because again, if you stand still in this game, as you guys all know, you're going to, you might plug some operational gaps and then you'll wake up in 3 years' time and you're still behind. So we've tried to get a balance in our strategy and our delivery plans between plugging those operational fundamentals. So, even just managing time and managing labor standards in DCs, for example, and some basics around transport management, transport planning, and some other basics around offering customers track and trace on parcels. But in parallel to that, we jumped straight into some data and data analytics work, creating a data lake, getting a Domo tool, getting some analytics, and bringing in a couple of people to help us understand how we can manipulate that data. Because if we stand still on that score, we're going to wake up, as I said, and we're going to be behind. So that's the starting point. Think about business outcomes. For me, yes, vision, objective, strategy is great, but need to break down those objectives into business outcomes. And we asked ourselves, what would we expect to see, feel, hear, experience as a company, as a team, when we've delivered our strategy? So what would be the stories that people will be talking about? Would it be external recognition from companies or bodies outside of our industry? Would it be a buzz around the function and our people wanting to come and work in supply chain? Because historically, I found supply chain's not been that sexy, to be honest. People have, oh yeah, great, it's warehouses and it's picking and packing. And actually, as we heard from this morning, the future's never been so bright, I don't think, for supply chain. To start encouraging new people in, encouraging millennials, and encouraging top talent from other parts of the business to come and work and experience in supply chain. So from a business outcomes perspective, we found it really key. We used our pillars of our strategy, which essentially customer, high-performing team, profitability, end-to-end processes, innovation, underpinned by a health, safety, and environment plinth, and then we split that into outcomes, so seeing, feeling, hearing, and we use that to try and drive and make sure that we were aligning back into the company strategy, but also we had something tangible to go and talk to our people about an endpoint. So moving on, holistic, cohesive, and balanced, they're pretty basic. I don't want to teach you guys to sort of suck eggs or motherhood and apple pie, but I've seen plenty of examples where we try to deliver strategies that haven't covered people, process, and technology or data. You know, and if you don't do the Holy Trinity triangle, we will struggle. We all know that. Cohesive. Make sure there's no gaps in any solutions you're going to deliver or any strategies. You know, people nowadays, it's agile, it's minimum viable products, it's pilots. It still needs to be a solution that works end to end for whatever bit of the business you're driving that into. And again, we've put things live based on some engineering techniques within our technology department that essentially have left us with gaps, and we've had to go back later and plug them. So from my perspective now, I always have a stand back and say, is this going to fix that end-to-end problem? Or at least get me a base solution that's still cohesive, comprehensive. Balanced, you know, we tried to get a balance between future-proofing and aspirational, pragmatic and real. And that's always a balance in terms of managing expectations and stakeholder expectations. It's always a balance around priorities. And it's always different for every company because everybody's got a different starting point. They've got strengths and weaknesses. And we did some SWOT analysis. And we linked back into our starting point piece here. And we just, you know, use that to temper some of the areas we were going to try and target. Changing behaviors. My view is think early about the behaviors you want to move to. It may well be that you're fine on culture and behavior. You've got, you know, everybody in the organization's aligned. They're all proactive, can do, positive, open to change, open to challenge. And it may not be. So my view is when you're thinking about the physical strategy, think about the behaviors you need to move to and plan that in as part of that strategy work. Finally, sustainability. Not necessarily the sustainability around the green element, although any good strategy nowadays needs to incorporate that. This is more about having a mechanism to keep it fresh, to have regular reviews, sense check. We're doing quarterly reviews where we all stand back. What's changed within our function? What's changed in our delivery? What's changed in the company? What's changed in the wider environment? What are the insights and feedback that our change management's given us from what we've been doing? And therefore, what do we need to adjust, calibrate, recalibrate, refine? Most cases, the vision and the objectives are not changing, but the tactics to get there and some of those outcomes and some of those strategic priorities are changing based on that feedback. So, next slide. No, not that one. Sorry, user error. Is establishing the right delivery plan. So I've split this into some basics, fundamentals on the left, and then some inputs to what I think is a good plan on the other side. So in terms of the basics, have those business outcomes close and at the front of your mind when you're planning. You can't afford to stray too far from delivering those outcomes, and it's quite easy to get distracted, I think, when you start getting into grouping, sequencing, different delivery methods, different projects, different initiatives, different levels of maturity across different business areas. So do keep those business outcomes front and center. Single vision and high-level design. If you're going to chunk work up, package it up, break it down, do pilots, do MVPs, you do need a single vision, a single point. And my view, a high-level design done up front, which can evolve, which can change, using some of those anchors, journeys, and stepping stones that I'm going to come on to, is really useful to allow you then to deliver with confidence that you can bring things back together and that you're still aiming towards that consistent outcome. Starting point, in this case, is just understand the capabilities you need, but what you've already got that you can leverage and where you need to start new and invest. So link it back in as well to priorities, obviously, in terms of the overall strategy and what you're trying to fix and your customer and your materiality assessments. And then it's a bit trite, I know. Think big, start simple, scale fast. We just tried to think about that as we planned our activities. We used to think start small, but we got some feedback from the teams along the lines of, well, you know, you're coming to us and you're saying start small. We're a big function. So what we tried to do was to try and tweak that bit of language to say, no, okay, we want to bring people with us. It's about transformation, bringing people with you, hearts and minds. let's change that to simple. So we start simple, because you can affect big change by starting simple, just as you can by starting small. So just moving on to the delivery plan. At the top, you've got the anchors and journey points and the stories. This, for me, is some work to bring to life the strategy and the outcomes. Over your journey, think about the key roles that you're trying to influence: customer, your people, maybe your suppliers, and think about what that journey looks like in the evolution through that strategy as you deliver change. So the stepping stones from change initiatives. So, we're looking at our transport. We're moving from a scenario where we've got hard-coded 3PLs doing carriers, doing deliveries for us into our SAP system. We've got no flexibility to swap them out if they lose tenders or if they perform badly. We don't get data from them to understand the performance. Generally, the performance meetings go along the lines of, so how did you do this month then? Not good. We've got very little transport planning capability. We've probably got 50 or 60 carriers at any one time, and we've got local fudges in different parts of the world that the system does or doesn't know about in some cases. So what we've tried to do is articulate a journey that talks about putting in a carrier engine, stopping the hard coding point-to-point interfaces into SAP, using the carrier engine to be able to have the flexibility to swap in and out more quickly through tenders and performance management, be able to do dynamic delivery options, so offer multiple carriers on a leg, customer choice, offer direct time deliveries, offer green options, and eventually things like pick up, drop off. We've got click and collect in there now as well. So we're trying to show a journey. We've got a data lake where we get the track and trace data, we get the performance data, we've got a Domo tool to do the analytics, and we can show a journey through that stepping stone over 3 years of the points at which we'll have what functionality. So we can explain it to our customers, we can explain it to our people, we can explain it to our suppliers, etc. So time well spent, from my perspective, is just unpacking some of those objectives and getting much more granular in terms of what it's going to deliver by when. Rocks, pebbles, sand, we use that as a way of scaling and estimating. I found it a good way of getting a mix of stuff through the pipe. If you imagine a fish skeleton, we've got the rocks and then you've got the bones coming off in terms of pebbles and sand. Rocks for us, $1 million, $2 million plus. Anything below $1 million in spend is a pebble, and small change is a sort of 10, 15 days of development effort, 20, 30K. And we try to get a mix through the pipe. Prioritization criteria for individual rocks, pebbles, and sand, consistent within that, but actually three separate criteria, jointly agreed up front. We've used cost benefits, we've used ease of implementation, we've used strategic fit, risk management. We take out straight away legal fiscal because they need to get done no matter what. So we know then we can manage our resources based on the fact that we've already got 12% of our resources doing legal fiscal changes any one time. Grouping and sequencing, projects into programs and programs into portfolios and then sequence, helps with economies of scale, helps manage dependencies, helps get a bit more bang for your buck. And I'll talk later about change radar. It helps to try and coordinate some of the change in certain areas and de-risk where you've perhaps got too much change going on. Implementation, think about the rollout. Often it's easier to think about the rollout or how you think you're going to roll out so that you can then group and sequence in a much better way. I've done projects where I've got to the end and thought, oh, it would have been great if we'd have just done this differently or thought about it earlier because, I'm going to roll out this, and 2 months ago I rolled out that, and actually we could have combined them together, for example. Business change, underpin the whole thing, have a business change line. That's not just at project level for me, that's at program level. We need to be planning the change, coordinating the change, looking at how we're going to approach the change. We all know we need to think about training, but this is much wider than that. It's thinking about that culture, the behaviors. So yeah, think about the change as early as you can. This is about executing some of the lessons that we've learned over the last 18, 20 months or so. Again, I'll try to focus on some basics that I won't dwell on, but I'll just quickly run through. and then some things that we found useful and things that we've learnt along the way, actually, to be honest, in some cases. So in terms of basics, it sounds obvious. Set objectives, hold them to account, manage your people, manage your initiatives. If you can get objectives into yearly performance appraisals for projects, great, should be doing that. If you can get objectives into yearly appraisals across functions to be consistent, that's even better. I'll talk in a little while about creating virtual teams. Having common objectives is really key, both at a BAU level but also at a project level. And get some of the BAU teams having the same objectives, so when we minimize the risk around implementation, there's a common purpose. So be aspirational. Again, sounds obvious, but aim high. And I keep being told I need to be more unreasonable sometimes. So don't do it too often, but to get that extra bit of delivery, to get it in next week, not to slip a day or 2 days, be a bit more unreasonable sometimes. Because as leaders, I think we need to do that, at least need to push the boundaries. Metrics and milestones speak for themselves, and then governance, scope management, management of change, standard tools across projects, standard formats. I've got a big network program at the minute where we've got about 6 different plans on a page format. We've got 3 different ways of planning, and it's been a nightmare trying to pull it together, to be honest. Also on governance, single version of the truth for data. So when you're talking about milestones and metrics, you're talking about progress, you're talking about where people are, there's a single version of the truth, so everybody's clear on what that is. Just moving on to the left, create teams, so virtual teams, physical teams, use matrix structures, use project structures, create cells, do it and give them a purpose, set them some objectives, set them some tasks, and then make sure they're self-sufficient. So we've done it in the past where we've given them everything apart from the SAP developer to make the SAP change, and then they sit in a queue for 3 months. Yeah? So what we've now done, at the beginning of the year, we set up a hit squad to do some small change work, and it's cost us 155k to get 800k's worth of benefits. And they are literally shooting stuff through because there's operational people sat with technical people, there's an architect on side, they can do their testing, developing, and we can get it live. We've got access to the production environments. It's working like a dream. And that's the sand, that's the sort of herringbones coming off the backbone of the fish. And we found if we don't do that, that's actually one of the main areas that our people see the most change in. Those common, often small day-to-day changes. It may be bay layout changes, it may be some changes in the warehouse, maybe some changes in the racking, it may be a new route setup. It doesn't matter. They see it, they feel it, they experience it. And before that, we had people waiting 2 years just to get a simple change through. So, minimum viable product, I've talked about that. We've looked at pilots, we've looked at proof of concepts to try and speed things up. We've looked at getting people away from the mindset that everything has to be 100% before they do anything, before they release it. And actually it doesn't. You know, look at your benefits case, look at your outcomes. If you can do something that's 80% and that delivers most of it, and then we can do a fast follow-up, assuming you can do a fast follow-up, obviously. But, you know, that's better sometimes than waiting months and gilding the lily and getting something 100% and then putting something live that's in effect been taken ages. So, change radar. We found this really useful. This is essentially a change heat map. So taking data from your projects, understanding from a plan and the impact of assessment and change, what's happening when, what change is going to impact who and when it's going to impact, plotting that on a map and on a roadmap and on a timeline, and then that's horizontally, and then vertically around the type of change. Is it people, is it process, is it systems, is it all three, and the level of change. We've managed to get a view of what's happening where across the next couple of years at least. I mean, it's difficult to forecast too far out. And that's allowed us to try and coordinate some of the change better. So we've actually made some interventions into projects to say, can you slow down or hold on a minute? Because if you wait a couple of months, we've got something else happening and we'll do it together. Now, we've also taken the opposite view of trying to pull things forward. And we've also looked at it and realised we're too late, and it is what it is, and it's just going to happen. But at least now we're on the front foot, I feel. And as long as your inputs are accurate at the front end in terms of those project plans and those impact of change assessments, it's a useful tool from our perspective. Fast track process sounds obvious, but you need a slick process to do it. You need another set of prioritization criteria, and you need to keep your single vision and your design in mind so that you don't go off tangibly, and also try and watch out for people crying wolf saying, yeah, it's really critical, because, again, we get some serial offenders in that score, as you can imagine. Team behaviours, I think it's really important for the delivery team to have the right behaviour, and this is not just proactivity and can-do. This is also about removing barriers, being able to challenge the status quo ways of working, and also asking for help. We've had a real problem in the past where people won't be vulnerable, won't ask for help, and they sit there, everything's fine, and suddenly it's red. And actually, what you want them to come to you and say is, hey, we've got a bit of a problem here, let's talk it through. Now, some of that is leadership. In the past, they've probably been shouted at, completely wrong, but that's where we are. So we need to change that behavior, because unless you get people being open and willing to share on some of these initiatives, you can't, hand on heart, be in control and actually have the confidence it's going to get delivered. So, and we all know project managers, they're heads down, elbows out. So, sustainability, again, just making sure you have regular reviews of your execution. So I'm going to move on, and this is the connecting piece. So this brings it all together. This is how we've found it easiest to get connection across that end-to-end process, because getting some stakeholder buy-in and ownership and commitment is one of the most difficult things I've found anyway. And I've seen more projects fail through not having the right commitment at a sponsor level and senior level than probably for any other reason, to be honest. I'll start on the left and work it through. So line of sight. One of the things that we found useful is to tie the functional strategy and the sub-functional strategy back into the company strategy. So we've got a company strategy, Destination 2025, that's got some corporate objectives, it's got some priorities, it's got some initiatives. We've linked ours back into that so that we can show a line of sight right from the top, right down to some of our lower level processes and the people who are carrying out those day-to-day activities. One, so that we can give stakeholders confidence that we're aligned and that we're delivering best bang for the buck for the company and the function. Two, so that we can explain to our people how they contribute right up and right down and the part they play. And three, so that we can secure the right levels of investment and we can prioritize in the right way and sequence in the right way. So that's been really important for us to get that line of sight and tie that back into the company. Make it tangible. We use the company processes and value chain. So whenever we're going to kick something off new, we'll get the level 0, make, plan, buy, deliver, sell. We'll break it down to the next level to understand who we need involved. And then when we get people around the table to start talking about an element of the strategy or an initiative or change, we can show them something tangible. They can look, feel, touch, see it. We've got different coloured circles on the processes to indicate who's involved, what type of change is involved, and the scale of change involved. And we found that a really useful way of getting people to a level of understanding so that they feel comfortable that they can say yes or no. And sometimes it's a no, and then it's a negotiation, and then there's a discussion and potentially a priority call. But with that, we found in the past, if we don't have something tangible, the conversations are just not worth the paper they're written on, and it's difficult to get people to sign up and commit because people tend to not be understanding. We use data to take the emotion out of it, data-driven decisions. That needs to be front and center through the strategy. And we also use principles. So if I know I've got a difficult conversation coming up, let's start agreeing some principles, some areas of common ground, and then moving into areas perhaps that are more difficult. If we all agree we need to leverage partners, then maybe we need to leverage our 3PLs better on our transport, for example. So, bring it to life. What we've done here is we've physically created what we call playbooks. So the product, supplier, inventory, pricing strategy I talked about, that's integrated. And as part of that work, the next level down, we got teams from each of those functions to literally create some playbooks. So to document the lower level objectives and metrics that they'll be measured on, a RACI, what's decided where, who's involved, handoffs list and dependencies between them and the other functions, a scope, and then the high-level processes. And then we got them in a room for a couple of days. They all presented back. We got them literally involved in role plays, talking to each other and sharing information. And at the end of it, we got people to sign up and commit that they will follow that. And we found that a really useful way to bring it to life. The knack is now keeping that live and fresh, but we've got the same sort of sustainability reviews involved in that. And for me, people work best when they've got that confidence that they can touch and see and feel it. So that's been a useful thing there. Change coalition, think about that change management. We used a slightly modified version of Kotter. So we talk about a powerful coalition. We talk about who are the influencers, who are the change agents we need on board, creating a mandate, creating a case for change. Again, putting that in front of people, alongside the vision, alongside the benefits. We found that quite useful. And just thinking, if you need commitment, it is about people. You need to bring people with you. Talking to people in terms of the power of the team, people commit to people, in my view. So if you can get the right resource on a project or an initiative or on a strategy, they're much more likely to support it. It's finding out what that right team is like. My view is it should always be an internally led, because we want to keep the knowledge in the company. But where we need to, we'll use external insight. So whether that's site visits, whether that's contractors, whether that's consultancy. We're doing things now that we've never done before, so we do need that external view. Otherwise, we're not going to future-proof it, and we're not going to know what good looks like in a lot of cases. And we also try and drive some collective responsibility. And we've got a mantra around "we win together." And I've used that on the flip side in meetings before, saying, you seriously don't want to be part of the team that makes this a success. We want to win together. Are you on board or not? It's a bit of a difficult conversation sometimes, but it soon sorts out whether they are or they aren't, and then there's a conversation. So, in terms of fundamentals, leadership, setting the tone, behaviours, creating followers. There aren't any leaders without followers. When you're creating strategies, you need people to follow it. So always in the back of my mind is, how do I get this through the organisation? How do I get people on board? Yes, those things will help, but how you behave and the tone that you set is also key. Stakeholder management and engagement, win-wins. Don't ignore the elephant in the room. I think we've all been there, in a meeting and on a project, and there's an elephant, and it's come in, and everybody's head in the sand. No one wants to do anything about it, and then suddenly, yeah, okay. And then practical ways of working. We're global, so we have challenges sometimes with geography and time zones. We try and get people in a room as often as we can, because I think that's best and it's worth the investment. But we also use collaboration tools. We use translation services where we need to, just to try and keep things working. So, some challenges and issues. Some of these are basically ongoing that we're managing. So too much demand. I don't think, and I've never wanted to say, we're just shutting the shop up now. There's no more ideas. So you basically got to manage the demand you get. And there's no silver bullet to this. We use a consistent prioritization and planning process. We manage our resources effectively. We have the ability to say no, but it's difficult, very difficult sometimes. We have the ability to delay and pause, but again, that's difficult as well. But it's more easy than saying no, but sometimes it's the wrong thing because it's never going to happen, and you just try and delay it, but you're just kicking it into the long grass. And then MVP, early benefit delivery. Things changing around you, shifting sands. We've all been there. Long projects, things change. Difficult to mitigate, but you've got your single vision, you've got your high-level design. Hold that dear, and be outward-facing. Look at what's changing around you in the organisation, and just be prepared to react. Bringing the regions in UK centricity. We are a UK-centric company. We have struggled to convince our regions and to convince our brands that we're no longer a command and control UK company, because it's important that we get consistency and collaboration. This is an ongoing challenge for us. So we try and get people in from those areas when we're creating teams and project teams and initiative teams and delivering strategies. We do the connect and commit. We look at communication and making sure that the language is right. And we come back to the outcomes, you know. So sometimes it's managing upwards in terms of saying, look, you know, it might be painful, but we need to create a diverse team. Sometimes it's managing the team on the ground and saying, look, you've got to be part of this. We want you involved, and giving them the confidence that their ideas won't just be ignored, and we will make some change for them. Differing levels of maturity. This is another one that we struggled with. We've got 12 DCs and they're all different. We've got automation, non-automation. We've got robotic arms. We've got automated packing, and then we've got manual everything. So we've really struggled to understand those as-is when you're doing your change, so that you can understand the gap between that and the 2B. And we've really struggled to implement solutions effectively, because when we've got out to sites, we've found workarounds, we've found fudges, we've found things being different. So again, very difficult. Do your analysis, no silver bullet, understand what's where, who's doing what, and feed that into your as-is. Be diligent, get into the detail, go and see it yourself, and incorporate that into your change plan. We've used some of the Gartner tools to help us do that maturity assessment. Some of it's worked. Some of it we found probably a sledgehammer to crack a nut in some cases, to be honest. But it is an ongoing challenge that we faced anyway. So coming towards the end now, this is a summary of what I've talked about. I found this quite useful when I've been dealing with stakeholders. And this just summarizes in terms of developing and refreshing the vision and the strategy, planning for execution, executing, and then doing those reviews. Some of the key get-rights from our perspective, so purpose, vision, we've talked about. Competitor and market analysis obviously needs to be fed in early. In terms of the initiatives on this side, the financial model is interesting. If you want commitment and true commitment, try and do a financial model early when you do your resource plan, because it's amazing how that focuses the mind. So you are going to take the £1 million out of your budget next year when we do this. Yeah. Don't leave it till halfway through the project. Have the conversation early. The execution we've talked about, and then the regular reviews and recalibration. So okay, that's all I've got. Any questions from anyone? Thanks for listening. Hope that was useful.